Decent person is horrified by what happened yesterday in Parkland. Every thoughtful person knows something horrible is going on in American society. Tragedies like this happen for a reason, and it probably doesn't have a lot to do with guns. The percentage of American households with firearms has dropped dramatically over the past 35 years. Meanwhile, the number of mass shootings has risen. If you're over 40, you did not grow up in a country like this. So the question is, what happened? It could be a lot of things. Far more Americans than ever before take psychiatric medications. Are outbursts of violence a potential side effect? We don't know, but it's possible. Does the social atomization of modern society play a role in all this? Well, spending life online does cause alienation. We know that. Last week, we interviewed author Johann Hari, who has studied the dramatic rise of depression in this country. As he pointed out, the most common answer to the question, how many close friends do you have, is now zero. A lack of meaningful relationships does cause despair. Perhaps in rare cases, it drives some to mass murder. Meanwhile, the nuclear family has collapsed nationwide. Does a generation of boys growing up without fathers pose a threat to this country? Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Fatherlessness is one feature common to many mass shooters. Nobody's surprised by that. And what about men more broadly? As a group, men are not thriving in this country right now. Ignore the propaganda, and there's a lot of it, and instead look at the numbers. Men kill themselves more, graduate less, and of course commit pretty much 100% of mass shootings. It's a disaster, which for some reason our elites persist in ignoring. In March, this show will begin a month-long series every Wednesday on what is happening to men. We hope it'll be interesting. But why haven't we been talking about this for years? And we're not saying any of these factors caused the massacre we saw yesterday. We don't know that. We are saying we ought to do our honest best as a nation to figure out what exactly is going on here. But we're not doing that. That vital conversation has been drowned out and made impossible by mindless screeching about gun control led by blustery charlatans in the media, you know exactly who they are, and also in Congress, whose only real agenda is moral preening. They aren't trying to solve the problem. Their aims are darker than that. Press a little bit and you'll see it. Sensible gun reforms, you hear that phrase a lot. You heard it all day today on cable news. What exactly does that mean, sensible gun reforms? Banning bump stocks? No. A piece on Vox.com today calls for a landmark gun control bill like the one Australia passed 22 years ago in 1996. That's the law that liberals are always telling you about. But the Australian law wasn't gun control, and it wasn't a voluntary buyback, no matter what they tell you. It was gun confiscation, a wholesale mandatory disarmament of the entire civilian population. Imagine what would happen if you tried that here in this country. America is not Australia for a bunch of reasons, including our history and our Bill of Rights. Imagine federal officials marching from house to house, seizing hundreds of millions of firearms from law-abiding citizens, and then fining and imprisoning those who resist. Vox approvingly calls this leadership. In fact, it's a recipe for bloodshed and civil war. It's nuts. Yet it is a common fantasy on the left. Dan Pfeiffer was a senior advisor to Barack Obama. Now he's a contributor at CNN, of course. Last fall, Pfeiffer wrote an article attacking his fellow Democrats for what he bluntly called fake moderation on guns. His advice was this: stop pretending to respect the Constitution and instead focusing on appointing judges who will nullify it. The goal? Gun seizures, ammunition regulation, the disarmament of the American population, a country where only the people in charge have guns and everybody else obeys. In the wake of yesterday's shooting, Pfeiffer's piece is going viral on the left. What he wrote is what they believe. So let's stop lying about this. The calls you're hearing today for gun control have nothing to do with protecting Americans from violence. What you're witnessing is a kind of class war. The left hates rural America, red America, gun-owning America, the America that elected Donald Trump. They hate them. Progressives are still in charge of most of the major institutions in this country, and they despise the autonomy of an armed population. They want collective punishment for the sins of a few. They seek to obliterate a core constitutional right rather than trying to mitigate its downsides. They call it gun control, but it's not. It's people control. For the left, voters who can't be controlled can't be trusted.